Basically, Congress said, look, you come to me with the top 10 list of things that you didn't know about last year and you do now, and we'll give you money to bridge from today to low rate initial production. Most people are just trying to catch up to basically what is AI, and it's progressed light years since the last time they had that conversation. So I think with drones, it's the same thing.
This week on the Drone Wars podcast, we have Mike McKay, an all things national security expert. So Mike, tell everybody a little bit about who you are. Who is Mike McKay?
Oh, I'm not going to get too deep. How much time do you have? There's lots of things. Grew up here in New York City, out in Queens. Went to the Marine Corps, ended up in the Marine Corps at boot camp about a month after 9/11. Joined the infantry. Went to the invasion of Iraq in 2003 with like the regular helmet head grunt infantry. Came back off that deployment, joined a unit called Force Recon. At the time, kind of the Marine Corps' answer to SOCOM. Not really. It was different. And then so we did Afghanistan in 2007, 2009, 2011. Every deployment completely different. The first one was kind of like being in the infantry again. The second one was very black helicopters and night raids. And by like 2011, we were like dressing in local gear, 2-foot long beards, like eating goats off the side of the road, like just rolling up on a goat herd, like, yo, can I get a couple of those goats? And then I came back from that, went up to the Hill in uniform, did the Congressional Fellowship Program, worked for the chairman, that time, the ranking member or the vice chair of the committee, because I think the Republicans were in the majority at the time, who ultimately become the chairman of the Defense Appropriations. And so
That's when I first met you, I think.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. And when a lot of these programs that we're talking about now, the Hellscapes and the Replicators of the world actually had really early beginnings, even then when they were looking at, as the NDS flipped to take a look at the Pacific at that point. We even talk about Tyrian distance. We were like, there's no way we could defend the Straits of Taiwan with what we got right now. So was on the Hill, then went and did congressional affairs for the Assistant Secretary for Special Operations for a year. Then ultimately ended up in the Pentagon as the Chief of Staff for the Special Operations and what's now a regular warfare office. Retired from the military, went back to work for the Chairman of Defense Appropriations. We did a bunch of cool stuff there. I think most famously, popularly, looking for funny words here,
it's late in the day in New York here.
It is late in the day in New York. We did the Appfit program. So we got back from the Reagan National Defense Forum. It was probably 21. And chairman's a simple guy, right? When it comes down to it. Big brain, big thinker, but like really just a simple guy. Really what you would ask for in a commander. He's like, I'm sick of hearing about this Valley of Death thing. Go fix it. Okay, cool. Let me get on that. And what came out of that with the help of like a lot of people was Appfit program. We did.
How does Appfit work? Explain it to people really quickly.
Yeah. So in the defense ecosystem, there's a term called the Valley of Death, right? You get a young startup kind of innovative company. They make a one-off widget, usually through like an SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research Program, or like they're working with DIU and OT and other transaction authority. So they get this prototyping money. They make a one-off thing. It's super cool. Everyone agrees that they want it. It's not until that thing is done and validated that you can start moving it into the process to be bought at scale. And that gap in there is about 2 to 3 years sometimes. And this is where companies fall into the valley of death. They got a thing, everybody wants it, but there's no money. And guess what? They go out of business. They end up taking adversarial capital because they don't know anything about that. And the Chinese are trying to get their technology or any other, or they get bought by somebody else. And we lose that technology or that company. So what Appfit does is it's congressional money. It's completely congressionally provided. It's starting to come into the budget now, but it wasn't at first. And basically Congress said, look, you come to me with the top 10 list of things that you didn't know about last year and you do now. I will give you money to bridge from today to low rate initial production.
Yep.
So we did that. We threw a whole lot of money, about to the tune of $1 billion at DIU to get them refocused on mission set, DoD top priorities, but specifically in that initiative, there was about $200 million of new money that focused DIU towards the combatant command. So they're getting that warfighter bottom-up drive, which was the whole goal of doing that. I wrapped up with the chairman's office. I went and spent the year of 23 to get the NDAA done with Senator Joni Ernst. She was running the Emerging Threats and Capabilities subcommittee at that point. Had a blast there. Ended up with her in Israel on October 10th. So 3 days after the war started in Israel, we were there on an Abraham Accords, CODEL. We had a bunch of members with us, bipartisan. We had hit a couple other spots in the Middle East, and then the war started, and we found our way into Israel and met with all their leadership, and then ultimately Bibi about 3 days after the war started. After that, 20 plus years in government, a Venn diagram of smoked over the bureaucracy, wanted a little something new. And over that period that I was working in Congress, I probably worked with 200 plus businesses that were like, how do I work with the government? How do I get funded? Why is this so hard? And I just said, there's a model here to work with really small seed, pre-seed, seed stage companies to help get them in the game and work through everything from early BD to how do you engage with Congress to stuff on like the big boy side of life, the outward operations. How do you get on a panel to speak at one of these events? How do you make sure that your website and your media marketing advertising is actually talking to your customer? Because we find out you make a really great widget and you think someone in the DoD needs it, but you might be wrong. It might be the wrong mission set, or you just don't even know how to talk to them and speak the same language. There's a lot of translation in there too. So I've been doing that for about a year and worked with a portfolio of great companies, and I'm motivated to still be in the game.
That's great. I mean, I think what's super interesting is real world experience, right? During GWAT, transitioning to the Hill, understanding how the machinery of the Hill and the Pentagon work, and then translating that into a career. It's very unique in this field, right? I mean, I don't know a lot of other people who've been able to pull it off quite like you can. Like, talk about, that's the only compliment I'm getting you today.
Good with it.
Talk a little bit about how, like, obviously the main topic here is drones and autonomy. Like, how does Congress see it? How does the Pentagon see it? Like, give us a state of the union.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So I remember when, not really too much in the deployments back in 2009 and 2011. Like we had UAS systems. They were the really early AV systems, Puma, Wasp, Raven. We'd use them for ISR. Most of the time, guys didn't know how to fly them. We just end up crashing them. They were, not that they were cheaply made, but they weren't durable. So you do, 5, 10, 20 runs and it's a wrap. But because it was a program of record, it's like they weren't attritable at the time. So like they just kind of go in a box. There wasn't this like wide scale application of it. So then kind of fast forward 2016, I was in northern Iraq with a Jedburgh team and a SEAL team prepping for the siege of Mosul. And we'd go out on the flot in the morning with the Peshmerga, the Kurdish partner force up there. And we just kind of go up and like World War I style, go right up to the lines and kind of, defend the line and see what ISIS was doing for the day. And we started seeing early appearance of drones on the battlefield. And these were the quadcopter types, straight up, straight down. And we didn't know at the time they were DJIs. They probably were. But they would go up, they do ISR on us, they do recon on us, and then they kind of go back down. And what we started seeing over that time period is that we realized not only were they using them for ISR, but they started getting their mortars in on our position tighter. And so they figured out how to use those to spot their mortars with those drones. And at that point, because of the job that I was doing and I was tied back to the higher command back in Baghdad, I wrote what was called a JUONS, or Joint Urgent Operational Needs Statement. I said, hey, the bad guys got drones now too.
Right. Your Juans helped Citadel get its first stuff into Iraq.
I love it. So yeah, so
when they tried to blow up Andy Christensen's car.
So right,
I have that picture on my phone.
So this was early 2016. Let's call it January, February, March, right? So we wrote that initial Juan and we pushed that back to the higher level command. And for us, nothing really happened. I remember dudes that were in the unit with us that were like, look, I'm just going to call my mom and have my duck shotgun sent out here. 100%. I could pop these things. Yeah, there you go, right? Guys in the team were like, look, man, you get me a good duck shotgun. I'll take that thing out of the sky. But we had no counter UAS. All the SIGINT dudes started being like, well, they're RF. Could we build like a directional RF jammer? And they'd be like, taking like broomsticks and trying to figure out like directional stuff. So everybody was real new with it at a time. And then I rotated out and Andy came in. That picture that you showed was the first time, to anyone's knowledge, at least to my knowledge, that a hand grenade was deployed with a commercial drone on his vehicle. And that happened in October of 2016. So, I mean, flash to bang, I wrote the first report on it in February, March. By October, they had weaponized them. And that's not a surprise, right? This is coming out of the same exact people who have been taking every piece of cheap Chinese technology they could get their hands on for the last 20 years and making it a bomb, right? So like, we knew that was coming. And then, right, so then now I'm on the Hill coming off of that. I did the deployment in Africa, and not really too much there, kind of big drone stuff, Group 5 stuff. We had the base that we were setting up in Agadez that's now, I think, Faulkner Group owns it or whatever. But it wasn't until I got to the Hill I met you and a lot of other people that really had some novel ideas about where this space was going to go. And that's across the spectrum, right? UAS, counter UAS, the AI systems and the automatic target recognition that kind of all go into it. And I started having these conversations. I was like, oh man, this thing's just taking off. But at the same time, what we saw was when the Biden administration came in, I remember specifically one of the first things that DepSec Hicks started talking about was AI ethics. And I had a huge problem with that, right? Because I'm like, this is the United States of America. We're the most ethical fighting force on the planet. Like, we teach laws of war, laws of armed conflict, rules of engagement. I mean, we hold our people to a standard. We have 20 years of experience that says if you do something criminal, illegal, unethical, downrange, we will prosecute. So it's like, that didn't sit right with me. And then the tune changed from ethical AI to kind of more trusted AI. And I was like, okay, we want to know if we're going to use these systems that they do the thing that we think they're going to do, because now we're putting them into a combat situation. And I think that really started moving the conversation forward to where we started that early acceptance of these as part of the formation. And at the same time, you have like all the guys who write books like Pete Singer, August Cole, Paul Shari were like, no, we can't. We don't want to get there. We don't want to get to the Terminator. The drones can't fight that war for us. And I think there was a real conversation at the time of how far, one, do we push the R&D? Two, how far do we probably talk about what we're developing? And then three, how much do we field? And then, what was it, February 22, Ukraine kicked off. Everything's out the window. I mean, it went full speed at that point, and now I think we're all struggling to catch up. So your initial question was, what does the Hill think about this? This is an AI situation with most people on the Hill. And I'm not talking about like the professional staff members who have this portfolio. They live it and breathe it too. But the members who are just task saturated with everything, it's the same kind of conversations they're having about AI, right? Most people are just trying to catch up to basically what is AI. And it's progressed light years since the last time they had that conversation. So I think with drones, it's the same thing. When we start talking about, automatic target recognition systems, the communications platforms that are required, the spectrum of trying to do counter UAS, right? From, the identification of a threat, the tracking and like marking or recognition of what that threat is, and then the defeat of that, and the multimodal, right? Is it RF? Is it an optical sensor? What's your defeat? Like, one of the technologies that we saw real early was Epirus. They had the Leonidas system, and they're still struggling to get that thing fielded because people don't know what to do with that. So you got a Congress that's really, really trying to catch up at best. The DoD started an emerging technologies policy office, and I figured like, oh, they put people in there to like really deal with this, but still everyone's struggling where when your technology starts pushing boundaries and you're out there, right? Switchblade 600 or even 300 was a good example of that. When Ukraine just popped off and that thing hit the ground for the first time, everybody's like, oh, that's real. Okay. Everyone struggled. So I think just like AI and everything else, people are struggling to catch up. So across the spectrum of how we train, organize, and employ our forces, the lessons being learned right now in Ukraine are light years away from where we are. The lessons being learned in Israel are light years away from what the folks are being taught right now that could potentially have to go do this. So from having the capabilities to knowing how to employ them and having the doctrine and the military warfighting understanding that this is just part of the formation now and it's as ubiquitous as a rifle or a hand grenade, we are not anywhere near where they're at in Ukraine and Israel. And that's what concerns me is that
you're seeing the TTPs and the technology from Ukraine show up in Mali, in Myanmar.
Yep.
Hezbollah's deployed them quite effectively.
I saw this Myanmar thing today.
Yeah.
Like it is cut and paste out of Ukraine and Israel and Myanmar. And it's like, one of the lessons we can and should have learned from the GWAT is information and knowledge on how to do these things proliferates at light speed, right? You can get that thing out and TTPs that we're seeing in one place of the world get to somebody else because they have a network and they pass information. They don't have any bureaucracy. So that information's out there and everybody else is adapting to it. And it just seems like we're so slow and cumbersome as the U.S. in the way we adapt to things. Now, look, there's some good examples out there. The U.S. Army Special Operations Command started a course called RUSIC. Is it great? I don't know. I haven't been through it or evaluated the curriculum, but it's better than nothing because you go back to other services and they haven't even started that conversation yet. So the technology is moving incredibly fast. The TGPs and the lessons learned are moving even faster. And I just think we're struggling to capture all of that at the moment.
Drone Wars is recorded from Firestorm's global HQ in San Diego. From our custom-built studio inside one of our hero products, a modular industrial-grade manufacturing facility designed to be deployed anywhere in the world within 24 hours for on-demand drone production. Each week on the podcast, we bring you cutting-edge insights from top industry leaders, sharing the breakthroughs and technologies they're working on, the hard lessons they've learned, and bold predictions that they have for the next 5 to 10 years in autonomous systems and advanced manufacturing. Enjoying the show so far? Then be sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now, back to the show.
I was driving by Pendleton last week, and there were Bradleys moving around in the hills. None of them had anti-drone grills installed. I mean, this just has to be table stakes at this point until we redesign the whole vehicle.
I know. And the Mad Max stuff, right? We were talking about like ISIS 2016. I mean, we were hitting them with stuff and they were making Mad Max trucks, right? They were like armoring them themselves. You look at Ukraine and Russia right now. I mean, they're building cages on the outside to make them drone proof. I mean, they're adapting in the same way that we asymmetrically, right? That's what you'd see.
Is that the issue? Is that we're seeing asymmetrical technologies deployed like not in an asymmetrical manner? They're basically being just like applied across forces, and it's like a fundamental change for how we think battles should be fought. Is that one of the issues, or like what do you think the problem is? It's probably multifaceted.
It is, and one of the things is just our speed of adoption. Right. Our speed of adoption is slow, right? Everybody's like, oh, we have an innovation problem. Bullshit. We don't have an innovation problem. We have the smartest, most creative human beings on the planet that live in the history of the world and have, right? You go back in the history of warfare, right? You go back to Billy Mitchell, who came out of World War I that said air warfare will dominate the future. And he said it so much, he got court-martialed out of the Air Corps at the time because nobody believed that air dominance was going to be a thing. You have Rickover, you have Kelly Johnson. I mean, you have people who personify, and we have that today. I mean, we just had a room full of these people that want to invent great things and they want to provide capabilities. We have an adoption problem where the way we do things, whether it's the way we buy things or we implement new TTPs into our formation, it's just really slow. Talking to some folks and probably this, same or similar people that you talk to coming out of Ukraine, they're adapting daily to a new battle space in front of them, where we used to have this idea that the front line or the line of contact was defined by 120 millimeter mortars, 80 millimeter mortars, 60 mortars, armor, and then what you had in your organic weapons system. And the bad guys never had 120 mortars, at least not in the last 20 years they haven't, right? In the GWAT they didn't. So we knew that we owned the battle space. Today you're seeing 10, 15 kilometers of front line because that's how far they can get their drones, right? The folks who are fighting in the trenches today are like Back to the Future, World War I in the trenches, but with all the considerations that there is a constant threat from above now that they have to consider all the times. And the TTPs, the kids that are going through the School of Infantry for the United States Marine Corps right now are not being taught how to go fight there. And it's all fun and games. It's like, oh, we'll get there, but that's a Ukrainian thing or whatever, we'll learn. But the fact of the matter is that the Russians step 1 foot, drop 1 missile inside Poland, and now it's NATO Article 5, and now we all got to go, and the sons and daughters of America have to go to the Eastern Front and fight in Ukraine. They're not prepared to go do that.
Right. And
it's an adoption issue, and it's hard to change doctrine and TTPs. We even live that in the GWAT. Fortunately, we were lucky that we had a good feedback loop. We had the team before us would download us on what happened, and we would constantly learn, but I just don't think that's happened.
We're going to see really quickly here, we're filming this in November. When the North Koreans hit the flat, we're going to see how good the Russians brought them up to speed. But that should be really important for us to watch because, these are their best soldiers or some of their best soldiers. And these folks have been trained to fight a war a very certain way. And now they're going to have to adapt at lightning speed or they will be cut to pieces. I mean, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately for us, the North Koreans from time to time will put stuff out, for like propaganda videos. These are really infantry formation, big military kind of folks. I mean, I'm sure they have special operations, but like this is formation military, right. Real, fire and maneuver kind of stuff. If they get destroyed,
yes,
in Ukraine, it's going to be very telling that we can then be a bit self-reflected and say, well, what are we train? Are we still training our guys basic blocking and tackling, fire and maneuver, squad infantry tactics? And does that still survive? And it's not going to be a question of, speculation. If you have 10,000 North Koreans that couldn't adapt to this new battlefield because they hadn't been living it for a year and a half, we're better than the North Koreans, don't get me wrong, but like we may suffer the same fate if we end up Article 5 and end up over there, which scares shit out of me.
The Ukrainians are licking their chops. I mean, depending on who you believe, they're knocking out over 1,500 Russians a day, which is just unbelievable. And they're using 10 to 30,000 drones a month, depending on who you talk to pull this off. So let's focus in on that manufacturing for a second. You and I walked the Hill 2 weeks ago, and this was the first time I've heard congressional staff not talk about the 7-day problem, which was we had enough autonomous systems for a week. They said we have a 6-hour problem, right? Is the message getting through to Congress, do you think, or is it very sparsely making its way through?
I think it is. I think the narrative has started to turn. Back in 2018, it was we need new cool things, right? It was the big defense primes aren't thinking outside the RFP in front of them, right? Having that very defined from the DoD requirement that we need this widget, we need it built like this. Which one of the 5 of you can build it for the best price. And we were like, well, you're not being innovative, right? And, Palmer Luckey comes on the scene and he's like, I'm not even going to ask you what you want me to build. I'm just going to show you what you're in. Right. Very, very Henry Ford, right? If I asked people what they wanted, they'd say, I want faster horses.
Yeah. I'd still like a faster horse.
Right. They get cars out of that, right? So, I think it's starting to turn. I think people are understanding. I think, and as maybe played out as it is now, I think going back to the concept of the arsenal of democracy, people really can envision those Detroit factories and cranking out the World War II machine in the way that they did. And people are saying that's not a new cool widget, that's scale. Now, we're not even close to that. I said back at the beginning of this year, I did a panel for someone, I don't even remember, but I said, look, Replicator is not about new cool stuff. It's about who can make stuff at mass, at scale, as fast as possible. And that's always been the narrative. Are they there? I don't know. Is the generation, because we have a generation now of DIU X kind of starting it through your DIU today and your works companies that have come up to the Softworks and Appfit. This is a whole new generation of companies. The question is, can they adapt to the modern environment from, great, you made a cool thing that we didn't know we need. We agree that we need it. Now, can you make 1,000 of them a month?
Right.
That's the next evolution in our new generation of companies that they need to adapt to. And I think that's the problem that Replicator can and should be focusing on solving.
So look in your crystal ball, right? What does a good outcome look like? And what's the outcome that troubles you with how we adapt autonomous systems in the West?
So I would like to see a leveraging of all technology against all technology. Okay. And the way I envision that is there shouldn't be a military today. Like, we just have to be very real that today there shouldn't be a military tactics or doctrine manual that's printed, because if you've printed it, it's already obsolete. We should be using the lessons learned that we have plenty of, tons and tons of experience of people who have stayed connected to the wars in Israel and Ukraine, to pipe that data back, to bring back the case studies. And every unit that goes out on a training op, they're going to National Training Center, they're going to the next event, they should be working off the newest download of the newest update of the newest TDPs. You can do that with an LLM. There can be a software, and it doesn't say get away from doctrine or just go out there and do whatever you want, but it should be informed by what's actually going on in the world if we actually consider we're going to fight there. That's what best case looks like to me, is that the new technology is coming in and we're away from necessarily I like this widget, A10, MQ9, pick your thing. It's not about that thing. Is it meeting need for today? Companies will become more agile, and the units that deploy these things are all going to become more agile because we have the technology on board and on hand to be able to do that. We just need to apply it all against each other. Gotcha. The worst case scenario is we're getting ready to go into another administration transition, right? The concern is how long does that transition last? How long does it take for the new team coming in to say, I like this, I like this, I like this, let's keep that, let's change that, because TikTok can't stop the clock, right? 2027 is coming, right? The day, if anybody still believes in the Davidson window, this is where we're going, right? Xi Jinping's got milestones out there, 2049, they have to do this, right? We can't stop their progress towards whatever they want, being the CCP. So the more delay that we have in our process is what really concerns me. Right now, this is where I'm at. I'm on bad guy watch right now. We've had a presidential election and we have a lame duck president right now. Regardless of your party or politics or anything, it's a fact of the matter. We don't get a new president until noon on January 20th. Right now, if I'm advising Xi Jinping, if I'm advising Putin, now is your opportunity to grab everything you think you can get that you wouldn't try under this new president. So they have to do that assessment. And now we're on bad guy watch to see what Iran's up to, what North Korea's up to, because we're in a very dangerous period here. Because the question is, would a Joe Biden on his way out potentially commit the United States to World War III, or do we just let that shit go, whatever it is? And on the back end of that, the U.S. is in a much different place geopolitically if in the next 90 days we completely lose Ukraine. If in the next 90 days Iran rolls out their nuclear weapon that they've been building for however long, and now they just want to rub it in our face. If in the next 90 days we wake up tomorrow and China just took Taiwan without a shot fired because they put up a blockade, that's a very different American world standing. And in the next couple months, that's where I'm concerned. And I truly believe in the best deterrence is a strong national security infrastructure. And today we're not in the place, at least publicly, in what the DoD says, I think, to deter any of those activities. So I think right now in the next 90 days is a very sketchy time period. I hope coming out the back of that, we realize that we really do have the ability to tamp down the conflict, the stress, the friction, I think, around the world with a strong U.S. presence, strong allies and partners, and an industrial base that can actually produce overwhelming results. And everybody goes back to being like, not today. Right. And I think we can get there.
That was awesome, Mike. Where can people find you if they want to follow you or talk to you online?
Don't follow me. No, I'm kidding. No, I got a presence on LinkedIn. I try to post on there. I try to keep it real and provocative, and I mean, not provocative. I'm not trying to stir up shit, but there's stuff that I hear from people that I work with that don't necessarily have the voice to be able to say, hey, this is fucked up, because they get blackballed because they have a company. I can get away with a lot more. So, I just try to echo what I'm hearing from people out in the small companies that are really trying to do the right thing. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm running around, I'm at events, come up, say hi.
And what's your company called, or what's your company website?
So I got a small LLC that I work with early stage businesses and help them do all the things we just talked about. It's Cognitae, it's Latin. COGNITAE.io.
That's fancy. I don't speak Latin anymore. I'm just kidding. No, thanks for coming today.
Thanks for listening to the Drone Wars podcast. Each week, we bring you fascinating conversations with leaders shaping the future of air, sea, land, and space technologies. Catch new episodes every Wednesday wherever podcasts can be found. Until then, we'll see you next time.